For the past few months, markets have been volatile, but overall they have managed to stay resilient due to the trust of domestic investors, despite the FII outflows. But what to expect in 2025? To talk about this and her life journey, we have here with us Radhika Gupta, who's the MD and CEO of Edelweiss. She's inspired many of us after having a meteoric success in her career by becoming a CEO at the age of 33 in 2017. Pleasure to have you, Radhika.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Radhika, I was talking about volatility in the market. What is that biggest mistake that the investors make while the markets are volatile?
I think they become very obsessed with the desire to do something when there is volatility. There is so much news in today's environment without any disregard for media, but between social media and all forms of media, there's so much noise that it almost compels you to take action. And then when you have this desire to take action, especially when there is a bit of volatility or a storm, you take emotional action. So you'll stop your SIPs prematurely. You'll redeem just when things are about at the low. And look, I'm no stranger. I've made these mistakes in an earlier part of my life as a young investor. But I think panicking, the urge to take action, to prematurely stop those investments, to redeem those investments, these are all things that start happening in a crisis. And I always tell investors, if you don't understand what to do in a crisis, do nothing.
So what was your first investment? And, where did you invest exactly?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk technical investments, so I started earning at 21 when I had finished my undergrad in the US. And for a couple of years, I was actually quite lazy. So money just kept lying in the bank. And then I think a year or two later, one started investing. In the US, they have something called a 401k, which is a mandatory deduction that you have in your salary. So that was my first investment, and it happened in funds. It was a combination of US mutual funds, international mutual funds, all of that. I mean, throughout my investing career, I have only invested in funds. I have never done single listed equities because of the compliance restrictions that they are with a profession like mine, and because I'm in the fund business, so I better believe in funds.
And what does your portfolio look like today?
So again, funds dominate a part of it. There are really two parts to it. The liquid listed part, which is 95% of my portfolio, maybe more than that, is all mutual funds. It's a combination of balanced advantage funds, some equity funds, that could be index funds also. Like I have a large and mid cap index fund. I have small cap funds. I have mid cap funds. So this is what it is broadly, some international funds, but really about 10, 12 funds across 4-5 major categories. Half the funds will be from Edelweiss AMC. Half the funds will be obviously from outside Edelweiss AMC. So it's a mix of that. 5% of the portfolio or less than that is my unlisted investments. Most of them were made on Shark Tank, a couple of them after that. That I don't really consider an investment portfolio, although we can talk about it. That is a bit of my nation building portfolio.
Yeah. So do you have more percentage of large caps right now or mid caps?
So I don't skew around with my large and mid allocation. Broadly, I want to remain a multi-cap investor, which means that I have a healthy mix of large, mid and small. Usually 40, 30, 30 seems like a nice space. A lot of my mid and small cap investing I do via SIP. So obviously I get a monthly salary and those proceeds. So I do very large monthly SIPs. In fact, I try to maximize the amount of my post-tax savings that goes into SIPs. And so a lot of my mid and small cap allocation happens that way.
How do you think the year gone by for the markets, and what is your outlook for 2025?
So I think 2024 was a star-studded year in that sense. There were elections in 3 major countries. Surprising outcomes in the case of most elections. There was the start of a rate cut in the US. So it was in that sense a star-studded year. And I think from a market's point of view, it really felt like a year of two halves. The first half felt like the froth and the bullishness continued. And the second half, you saw some volatility. net, I think investors walked out of 2024 making money. The Nifty was up double digits. Mid and small caps were up more. I think as you enter 2025, the line we've used at Edelweiss Mutual Fund is you have to move from the politics of elections to the politics of earnings, because markets have run up in the last couple of years. And now at these valuations and this growth, what you need to sustain a market rally is continued earnings growth. So you really need to see companies delivering the numbers, the economy delivering the numbers. I think this year is really about that. And I think for investors, this year is a year of consolidation. It's a year of having moderate to muted expectations, and moderate expectations is not a bad thing after 3 years of a phenomenal rally.
Yeah. Which are the sectors which you're bullish on, and which do you feel are overheated at this time?
So I think sector rotation, before I answer this question, has become very aggressive now. It's become a lot faster. The sectors of 3 months ago quickly don't become the sectors of now. And before again I answer that, I would say, we always believe that while investors love to answer this thematic question, a diversified approach is extremely powerful and give the fund manager that flexibility. As far as rotation, I mean, in our own portfolios, if you went a year and a half ago, industrials, manufacturing, heavy sectors, etc., were very significant overweight. We brought down that overweight. It's not that we're bearish on them, but we've brought down the overweight to things like capital goods. Last year, we took up the weight in IT. It looked like a bit of a dog sector in the first half of the year. We actually launched an IT fund in the first half of the year, I think reasonably close to the bottom. And so we continue to be excited about that. We do believe the consumption side of the economy is going to start picking up. You are already seeing some strength in premium consumption. And we do believe that in this coalition environment, you will see more SOPs for the rural side of consumption. So consumption is something that we are interested in, launching a fund in that category, adding those positions to our portfolio.
Do you feel the private capex is going to pick up as well?
It needs to. So I think this is a year, and we're also coming up on a budget where you will have to see both government spending and a pickup in private capex.
And what is your view on commodities, gold and silver?
So I think in a rate cut cycle historically, gold as an asset class has performed, and in an environment where inflation levels, especially globally, are not the lowest. I think gold is a very interesting asset class. We also think silver is a good addition to the mix. In fact, a blended gold and silver portfolio is actually quite an interesting portfolio. We have a product in that space because together gold and silver almost work like large and mid caps in equities. Okay. Gold is your safety asset class. But silver has industrial use as well. So when there is a commodity rally, silver tends to do very well and gold provides more protection. So we do believe that for investors, it can and should be part of the asset allocation. I don't think investors do a great job timing it. So I think it should be a static part.
So what could be the asset allocation at this point of time, and which strategies could work for the investors?
So look, asset allocation is very personal. I always say this. So there's no right allocation, but I said 2024 should be the year of the middle path, and I continue to say 2025, and I don't think people were very middle path in 2024 because they were doing some very wild things, but I continue to recommend the dal chawal middle path, a more balanced approach to equities, so multi-cap in nature, not jumping entirely to large cap because you are seeing earnings growth in the mid-cap segment, and a reasonably healthy mix of multi-cap, international equities, fixed income, quality fixed income, and some commodity is a good blend.
Okay. So we're hearing that, rate cuts might happen, and Edelweiss has a lot of debt funds. So what do you think will be the strategy ahead, and how will you strategize?
So I think, a large part of our current debt book is passive and target maturity funds in nature. And we know investors struggle with this question of when to enter, when to exit. So that's why a lot of our products are target maturity, buy and hold kind of products, and we continue to do that. We will launch more actively managed product, particularly for investors who want to play the longer end of the cycle if there is a rate cut. We also offer a number of low risk fixed income solutions with more efficient taxation, whether it's our arbitrage fund, what we do in our multi-asset allocation fund, or what we do in our equity savings fund.
So, any specific equity and debt funds which investors can look at?
So
Categories?
I keep it very dal chawal, as I said, flexi and multi-cap for moderate investors, and balanced advantage or aggressive hybrid for more conservative investors.
Delving a bit on your personal life. So you've spoken a lot about challenges you faced while growing up and professionally. And today, a lot of young individuals also have this problem of stress in work, in life. What is your advice to them from your experience?
Oh God, I think anxiety, I was just having a conversation with someone. I think anxiety in the workplace, in your personal life, challenges around mental health are becoming, so much more common. Maybe they were more common before, but we never spoke about it. And I do believe we also live in a tougher social media driven world. And my learning is you've got to be a little more offline. As I'm getting older, this is something I'm realizing. I think comparison puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you. And really, my advice to young people is to let go of the measuring stick. It's a beautiful line I heard Demi Moore in her Golden Globe speech recently. She's like, you finally will realize your self-worth. You'll never be good enough. You'll never be pretty enough. You'll never be rich enough. But you'll realize your worth when you put down the measuring stick and stop measuring your net worth to the next guy, who's talked about his portfolio on Twitter, or stop measuring your vacation to the guy who's posted about his vacation on Instagram. So my advice is to go a little offline and ditch the measuring stick.
Do you spend less time on Instagram now or
I do
social media?
Yeah, look, I love social media. I've been very active on social media, especially till a couple of years ago. I think it's a great tool to reach out to investors and to share interesting thoughts, to share stories. So I'm not taking away from the power. I spend a little less time, or I spend time, but I know what I want to get away from social media. I'm very clear with it. So
yeah, there's a boundary.
There's a boundary. So I post interesting content, but I don't read comments. I don't get upset by trolls. I just live with it. And of course, now I have a 2-year-old son, so I spend a lot of time offline, especially because I'm trying to let him not touch digital devices.
Yeah.
In fact, he keeps telling me now, Mama, no phone, no phone. So
that's quite good. So, you married quite early on, like in 2008. And do you feel, sometimes young individuals, we have discussions and we feel that marrying would sort of affect our career and, maybe stop it or, restrict it in some ways. What is your view on this? And what according to you is the secret of a happy marriage?
I think partnership, because it's a long partnership, right? And finding a friend. And look, a lot of young people, in fact, my husband and I were having this conversation, that a lot of young people are talking about the fact that marriage will affect your career, kids will affect your career. And all of us have been through these fears. I mean, I publicly talked about being pregnant and worrying about the impact on my career. And I can sit here now, being a mother, being married, being a daughter also, parents getting older, everything, saying that don't get overwhelmed by the anxiety or be consumed by the fear that it is not possible. And of course, I don't judge anyone who chooses not to get married, not to have kids. But if you're not doing it out of fear that it's not possible, let me try and tell you that maybe it can be possible, and why don't you work to make it possible? And my husband and I work every day to make it all possible, with both of us running CEO careers, our son being very young. We're coordinating who's going to school, what day, how the drivers are going to be run, who's going to be there at night for him when he sleeps, who's traveling, what day. It's not an easy balance, but it's possible with the right amount of partnership, with asking for a lot of help, and with making few happy compromises.
So happy compromises would be the secret to...
No, happy compromises to hote hain. I mean, I remember there was a time that I was working a lot, like I was traveling a lot, working a lot, etc. And then there was a Monday, and my husband and I were invited to an event with one of the most prominent people in the business community in India, and you rarely get a chance to meet this individual.
Hmm.
And I hadn't seen my son for days, and I was like, so my husband was going to this event, and I was like, should I go to this event or should I not go? And I finally took a call not to go.
Hmm.
Because at that moment, to be there as a mother was just that much more important. And thought that it's a compromise, it's a happy compromise. I made that choice.
Does it help when your husband is in the same career, or it gets quite competitive sometimes? I mean, just a curious
It's a
question.
mix. There is no black and white answer. I think it helps more than it hurts because at least someone understands. At least, you're going through, and financial services is very volatile. Capital markets is so volatile. You go through a bad market period, you don't need to explain the impact of that to your spouse. You can kind of be partners in each other's problems. So if I'm dealing with people issues and he's dealing with similar kinds of people issues, we can of course advise. So I think there's no right answer. I mean, I'm not saying go out and look for a spouse in the same profession, but I think there's a bright side to everything. So I choose to look at the bright side.
What are your dinner table conversations? Do you talk about finance, or you talk about?
We talk about our days. We talk about our son a lot. We talk about the family a lot. We have very different interests outside of work. So I like to write. He has his own Ironman thing going. So it's a mix. I mean, we don't plan that. अच्छा dinner table पे ना office की बात नहीं करेंगे. We don't try to create these plans or boundaries. We keep it very organic. We're actually very fortunate these days if we can have dinner together. So let alone planning the dinner table conversation. But a lot of our conversations are increasingly about our son. And when our son is sitting with us anyway, he's like, no talking work, no talking work. So then we talk to him about his girlfriends, I guess.
You did Shark Tank. So how did your life change after Shark Tank?
I mean, I take a lot more selfies at airports. I don't know how to say this. I enjoyed the experience. I think, professionals, financial services folks have never been represented on that show. And so I said, why not do it? Why not learn something new? And obviously, reality TV is totally out of my comfort zone. And I think finally it's a great way to give back to India's entrepreneurial ecosystem. I mean, I am an entrepreneur. I'm a product of entrepreneurship. So why not? I take a lot more selfies at airports. So that's quite sweet. And people write very, very sweet notes. But I was known before Shark Tank too. It's just, I think a few more people know me after that. I think the companies, meeting and interacting with some of these companies has been very exciting, and there's a lot to learn from that. So I think that's what you take back.
And we also learn from such things.
No, they're great stories.
So you've made some commitments during the show.
I have.
So how have the startup responses been like? And did you face any challenges post the show in some deals which couldn't work or something?
I'll be very transparent because I know there have been lots of comments on deals not going through X, Y. So I'm very transparent. I mean, I'm in the fiduciary business, so one should be transparent. So I committed to 6 deals on the show. 4 of them are done, actually.
Okay.
And we closed all our deals in 6 months, 3 months. So I was very clear that when you make a commitment on television, you have to go out and meet it to your best possible ability. And you should do that fast because the worst thing to do is make an entrepreneur wait around or chase you for capital. So I'm very proud that 4 of those deals are done. 2 of those deals did not go through. In both cases, the entrepreneurs said no.
Oh, okay. Post the show.
Yeah.
All right.
And that also happens. That's also okay.
What's your vision of India in the coming years? And, if you see the trend also that domestic investors have really set the stage and really helped in stabilizing the market. And FIIs are no more a big concern for the Indian market. So what do you have to say on this?
Oh, well, I think there's something to be very, very proud of. As a mutual fund industry person, when people talk about the fact that we have this 25,000 crore SIP book that when investors globally redeemed more than 1 lakh crore from our markets were held stable because of people like us. We feel very good. And yet we know it's the beginning of financialization. I would love in India, honestly, where 50% of the population is a mutual fund investor. Today, that number is only 5 crore people. I would love that number to be 70, 75 crore people.
Why do you think that is the case, that domestic investors have really taken, trust in the equity markets?
I think it's many things. One is financialization is a natural process in any country. Second is, I think the younger, as India evolves, it's getting more risk taking in our desire to start up, in our desire to do jobs, in our desire to invest. There is a lot more awareness. There's a lot more access because of digital platforms. And I think campaigns like Mutual Fund Sahi Hai, all the equity market campaigns, all of this has helped. So I think it's a confluence of factors. And finally, we have a regulatory ecosystem that has created trust in a mutual fund product. Finally, aap paise dalo, you get money back in 2 days. It's not something many things can claim.
And what are the learnings which you apply from your finance in your life or vice versa? Anything?
There's so many. I mean, I think personal life and finance mirror
Top
each
3.
other. Yeah. Playing the long game the long term is a very, very big one. Because I think money is made in the long term. I think businesses are built in the long term. I'm naturally a very impatient person, and I think investing is teaching me to be patient in life. I think having emotional balance is very valuable in both life and investing. So if you tend to look at investing or markets or life on a day-to-day basis, it feels very volatile. But if you just start to sit back a little and zoom out, as I call it, the volatility reduces. So having emotional balance, I think, is extremely important. And I think the third thing that markets teach you is that you are always a student, because you do lose money on some days, right? And that is true in life. So one always wants to be a learner. So being a student is a great thing. Markets or life.
What inspires you and what drives you that, you said you're ambitious, but is there something which, sort of inspires you in life? Or somebody, some book or...
I think today actually India's journey is a great inspiration. And the opportunity, I believe I'm part of a fortunate generation, much more fortunate than my fathers or grandfathers, to build and work in this India. And so I think the opportunities that this India is giving me inspire me. And I want to make sure I can make the most of those opportunities. I also have a larger platform. I think one of the good things of Shark Tank, social media, all the profession is you have a platform, you have a voice. And I want to be able to use that voice wisely. And so, by the way, the other thing that's very inspirational is a lot of the comments and the things people say at airports and the questions and the notes they write, they're incredibly inspirational. And, they write, you inspire me, but I think they're incredibly inspirational because they make me want to do that much more work. I always say that if I had lived in the US, I may have made the same money, I may have had the same career, but I don't think the level of impact I could have created, I don't think there's no question about it. So I think the ability to create impact here is very inspiring.
What is that one advice which you feel you should have gotten early on in your life? I mean, you wish ki kash mujhe koi bata deta.
I think to trust, and it's very easy for someone at 40 to say that, I think to trust yourself. You need to trust your instincts, to trust yourself, to trust your decision making, and don't worry so much.
Thank you for those insights. Pleasure talking to you, Radhika.
Nice talking to you, Riddhima.